Hi, well, welcome to another tip from KansasFisherman.com. We oftentimes fish the plastic worm, and we always use a slip sinker when we do. And probably the most popular way of rigging it is a Texas rig, which actually makes the worm weedless. And we've shown you in other videos how to actually rig that up. But one of the things we want to talk to you today about is the benefit of this slip sinker and a couple of different ways that you can actually use it to help you catch more fish. Number one, when we put a slip sinker on the front of our plastic worm, as you can tell, it slides up and down that line. And the biggest benefit to that is that when you actually hook a fish and a bass comes out of the water, for example, and jumps, more times than not, when they throw that hook and free themselves of that lure, the way they've done that is they've gotten slack in that line up near where they're hooked, up near the bait, and that slack allows them to throw that line, what we call spit the lure back at you, right? Well, the slip sinker with a plastic worm rig, what that does is that allows this line from the hook to the sinker to remain tight, even if that fish jumps. Now, you might have slack line from the sinker to the rod tip, which you don't want either, but you might actually have that happen. But even if that were to happen, this slip sinker, whether it's a few inches or it could be 2 or 3 feet up the line, when that fish jumps, helps maintain a tightness between the hook and down to where the weight is. And so therefore it helps you hook a fish and not lose as many fish when they jump by keeping that tight line. Now, that said, frankly, there are times in which if I'm fishing really heavy cover, I don't want this slip sinker to move itself away from the plastic worm. The reason I don't is if it's a really thick bunch of cover that I'm fishing, or maybe weed beds that I'm fishing, number one, I'll lose feel. If this comes over a limb and this stays back like this over a different limb, I'm going to have slack in here. I'm going to lose feel on that worm. And that's going to make not only feeling the bite harder, but setting the hook a lot harder as well. Number two, the bait itself, will have a tendency to get wrapped and caught more often if it's separated from the sinker as I'm working it through the brush pile or a tree or logs or particularly grass, that sort of thing. So there are times when we fish really deep, thick, heavy cover that we want that to stay as one unit. How do we do that? Well, there are a couple of ways to do it. What I call the poor man's way is you simply take a toothpick, just a plain old simple everyday toothpick. You insert it into the front point of that slip sinker and stick it down in there as far as it will go. When you've reached that point, you simply snap it off and break it. Now, what happens is that piece of toothpick in there pegs that sinker to your worm, and now they won't separate. So now when I'm fishing that thick brush pile or that heavy cover, that fallen tree that might be in the water, and I don't want them, I want to make sure they stay together so I can feel it. By pegging that, I can work that whole unit now through those branches with a much less chance to get hung up. So if you're fishing heavy cover and you're finding you're having a difficult time feeling the lure or you're getting hung up too often, have some toothpicks with you and peg that. Now, the other way to do it real quick is that you can buy sinkers that do the same thing. These slip sinkers these are two different styles, but they're both essentially the same thing. They've got the typical nose point on them, but coming out from the big end of it is a little spring. And the way that spring works, it's really simple. You just take your weight and you twist it and twist it and twist it, and as that sinks down into the heart of the worm, it'll stay there because of that spring. These are often called Florida weights or Florida rigs because they use these a lot in Florida when they fish big hydrilla beds and big grass beds and that sort of thing. So when you need to make sure that your worm and your weight maintain contact with each other, two ways to do it. Either peg it with the specially made bullet weights or peg it with the poor man's way, just a simple toothpick. Hope you found that helpful. Thanks.